My husband secretly stuffed a handbag into my suitcase, so I swapped it right back into his female secretary's luggage. By the time we passed security, he lost his mind on the spot. There are things in a woman's life that initially seem as small as a misaligned zipper, a misplaced item, or a sentence slipping through a cracked door. Yet, if you look closely, it is the loose thread that unravels an entire curtain of lies kept hidden for years. I discovered that handbag the night before we flew to Miami. I was packing my suitcase for a business trip with my husband. His name is Michael, 7 years older than me, and the owner of a construction materials company in Chicago. My name is Emma, 33 years old. I used to work as an accountant, but after we got married, Michael told me to stay home. He said a woman with a successful husband has no need to struggle out there. Taking care of the house, the meals, and family relations was enough. Back then, I believed him. I believed with a very feminine naivety that a man saying those words simply wanted to protect me. Only much later did I understand that some men want their wives to stay home not out of love, but to keep them completely outside of everything, knowing nothing, asking nothing, and lacking the power to interfere in their real world. I have always had a meticulous packing habit. Light clothes on one side, dark clothes on the other, cosmetics wrapped separately, and important documents in a waterproof pouch. Before every trip, I check my suitcase at least twice. Michael used to smirk and say I acted like I was going to war, wasting an entire afternoon on a single piece of luggage. I never argued. Women who have lived in a long marriage learn one thing. Not every sentence from a husband requires a response, because if you reply, you are always the first to get exhausted. That night, while unzipping the side compartment of my suitcase, my hand brushed against a strange object, a dark gray handbag. It was not mine. I stood frozen for a few seconds. The bag was made of incredibly soft leather with shiny zippers, sporting a compact but elegant design. I did not recognize the brand, but looking at the stitching alone, I knew it was not cheap. I had always used an old navy blue canvas tote with frayed straps and a slightly faded bottom. Michael had criticized it once, saying a CEO's wife carrying a bag like that looked like she was going to the grocery store. I only smiled because I hated buying expensive things with someone else's money just to hear them bring it up later like a favor. Out in the living room, Michael was on the phone. His voice was very low, but the house was so quiet that a few words still reached my ears. Yeah, tickets are booked. We will figure it out when we get there. She will not know. She will not know. Those 4 words dropped into my head. Very light but freezing cold. I opened the gray bag. Inside was an unsealed brown paper envelope. I pulled the contents out and saw several printed wire transfer receipts, photocopied contracts, and a stack of secretly taken photos of a woman. A side profile from behind, stepping out of an elevator, standing in a parking garage, sitting in a coffee shop. I knew this woman. Her name was Chloe, Michael's executive assistant. She was 31 and single. Every time she appeared at the company, she dressed sharply, hair neatly tied back, lips painted just red enough. Her voice was always soft, but her eyes never settled for standing behind anyone. I had met Chloe a few times at company holiday parties. She would call me Emma in a very sweet tone, but that sweetness did not resemble respect. It resembled someone smiling at an object she believed would sooner or later belong to her. I looked closely at the contracts. They bore Michael's signature and Chloe's signature in the section for the file manager. A project name caught my eye. The Florida Project. The same project Michael told me last year had lost over $1.5 million because the market crashed, clients canceled orders, and suppliers squeezed their prices. He had come home drunk that night, sitting in the living room clutching his head, complaining about how hard business was and how I, staying at home, could never understand. I had cooked him soup, put a cold towel on his forehead, and blamed myself for being utterly useless to my husband. Now, looking at those wire transfer lines, I finally understood that the money had not vanished. It simply took a detour through different names. I put everything back exactly where I found it. The envelope into the bag into the side compartment, zipping it up as if no hand had ever touched it. Strangely, I did not cry. Not because it did not hurt, but because when certain wounds are inflicted too many times, they stop making you scream. They just make you go silent. I took a picture of the bag on my phone and sent it to my best friend, Sarah, with a single message asking her to check how much the bag cost. She replied immediately, asking what was wrong. I stared at her words for a long time and did not reply. The next morning, I woke up at 5. Michael had left earlier, saying he needed to stop by the office to grab some files. His shirt carried the faint scent of a strange perfume, a sharp and sweet scent, not the kind I wore. The driver picked me up downstairs. As soon as he saw me, he politely mentioned that we were picking up Chloe at the office, before heading to O'Hare International Airport. I nodded. When the car pulled up to the company building, Chloe was already waiting. She wore a pale yellow blazer and white pants, pulling a small silver carry-on. As she got in the car, she turned around and smiled. "Good morning, Emma," I smiled back. "Good morning, Chloe." From the office to the airport, Chloe was on her phone constantly, talking exclusively about contracts, meeting schedules, clients, and conference rooms. She spoke quickly, concisely, and confidently. She sounded more like a boss than an assistant. Sitting in the back seat, watching the city of Chicago roll backward through the glass window, I suddenly found it funny. It turned out that in my husband's life, the person who acted most like a CEO's wife was not me. At the airport, Michael had already gone ahead through the TSA pre-check line. I told Chloe to go ahead while I bought some mints and would follow right behind her. Chloe did not suspect a thing and pulled her silver carry-on toward the security checkpoint. I stayed back by the luggage carts. At that moment, the area was crowded. Airport announcements, the sound of luggage wheels on tile floors, crying children, and rushing adults all blended into a layer of noise that perfectly masked a small action. I opened my suitcase, took out the gray bag, and unzipped the side compartment of Chloe's silver carry-on, which did not require a passcode. I shoved the gray bag inside. 30 seconds. Just 30 seconds. I zipped it up, pushed the silver carry-on forward, and went to check my own larger suitcase. Afterward, I strolled leisurely toward the security gate. Chloe had already passed through the body scanner and was waving from the other side, urging me to hurry up because it was almost boarding time. I smiled, placing my jacket, phone, and tote bag into the plastic bin. I walked through the metal detector. No alarms, nothing unusual. That was until Chloe's silver carry-on rolled out of the X-ray machine. Just as she reached out to grab it, a TSA officer stopped her. "Ma'am, please wait a moment, we need to inspect this bag." Chloe's face changed slightly. "What is wrong, sir? It is just my business trip belongings." "Please cooperate," the officer replied. Right at that moment, Michael walked over from the pre-check area. He was wearing a dark gray suit, his hair perfectly styled, a luxury watch gleaming on his wrist. Seeing the commotion at the security gate, he frowned and stepped forward, asking what was going on. Chloe immediately looked at him, her voice trembling slightly. "Michael, they say there is an issue with my carry-on." Michael turned to the TSA officer, stating that she was his employee and her bag only contained work documents. But before he could finish his sentence, the officer opened the side compartment and pulled out the dark gray handbag. I saw Michael's face perfectly at that moment. His smile stiffened, his eyes contracted, his lips parted and then clamped shut. His hand instinctively reached for his inner jacket pocket, as if looking for something to save himself. But there was nothing. The officer asked who the bag belonged to. Chloe shook her head rapidly, denying any knowledge of it. The officer opened the bag. The brown envelope was pulled out, and the photos scattered right in front of everyone. Photos of Chloe, contracts, bank statements. The air around us seemed to skip a beat. A few people standing behind us started whispering, and someone even raised a phone to record. Michael looked at me. I stood next to the inspection bins, holding my phone that I had just retrieved, wearing the perfect, bewildered expression of a wife who had no idea what was happening. He swallowed hard and spoke with great difficulty. "That bag is mine. I meant to give it to my wife." I stepped forward, looking at the bag, looking at Chloe, and then looking at Michael. "Yours?" I asked. My voice was soft. So soft that even I was not sure if it held genuine innocence or pure sarcasm. Michael stared at me, his lips trembling, unable to form a single word. I chuckled softly. "Ah, it must just be a misunderstanding then." I spoke very calmly. As calmly as if the weather was beautiful today, the flight was on time, and my husband had merely dropped a gift into his female secretary's luggage by mistake. But I knew I had figured it out. There are battles that require no screaming. By merely shifting the location of one handbag, all the lies step right into the light. Boarding went smoothly. The flight took off just past 8 in the morning. I sat by the window holding a book, but my eyes were not actually reading a single line. Michael sat one aisle over from me. Chloe sat right next to him. Originally, that seat belonged to another passenger, but Chloe smoothly told the flight attendant she needed to discuss business with her boss and managed to swap seats. I did not object. There are times when the more someone wants to put on a show, the further back you should step to give them the stage they need. Since passing security, Michael's face had not returned to normal. He tried to maintain a calm exterior, but his jaw kept clenching, his fingers constantly tapping the armrest. Chloe sat with her back straight, staring ahead, lips pursed, occasionally throwing a very quick glance my way before looking away. I understood that feeling. When someone is caught with something that should not be in their suitcase, Their biggest fear is not that strangers know, but that the person who is supposed to be clueless is acting far too calm. Once the plane reached cruising altitude, Michael unbuckled his seatbelt and walked over to my row. He leaned down and politely asked the man sitting next to me to switch seats so he could sit with his wife. His tone was polite, but left no room for refusal. The man looked at me. I gave a slight nod. He stood up, grabbed his bag, and moved to Michael's empty seat. Michael sat down next to me. After a long silence, he spoke in a low voice, telling me not to overthink what happened at the airport. I kept my eyes on my book. I am not thinking anything. That bag was meant for you, he said. I just misplaced it. I turned a page and asked very softly, "You intended to gift me a bag containing photos of Chloe and project documents?" Michael froze. I did not look at him, but I knew his face was changing colors. This man was so used to explaining things his way, so used to subordinates nodding at his every command, partners giving him respect, his mother defending him, and his wife staying silent. But today, a single question from me threw him entirely off balance. He lowered his voice even further, claiming they were company documents and he wanted me to understand his work better. As for Chloe's pictures, he said they were internal HR files that human resources must have mixed up. I turned to look at him. 5 years of marriage, and this was not the first time I had heard him lie. But in the past, I usually fooled myself into believing he might have a valid excuse, that men doing business had complex social obligations, and that an understanding wife should save face for her husband. Right now, I only found it hilarious. Internal HR files taken in parking garages, hotels, and coffee shops, and taken from behind? Michael remained silent. I closed my book, my voice still steady. Michael, you have been explaining a lot since the airport, but the strange thing is, I have not actually asked you a single question yet. He stared at me for a long time. In his eyes, there was scrutiny, frustration, and a slight trace of panic. Finally, he said he was just afraid I would misunderstand, because she is his employee and there is absolutely nothing outside of work between them. I nodded. That is good then. Those 4 words were so light they almost felt like nothing. But I saw Michael's hand grip his knee tightly. He could not stand my calmness. A guilty person usually wants the other party to get angry, because anger gives them an opportunity to soothe, argue back, shift the blame, and spin the narrative. But when the other person is completely calm, they do not know where to strike. Michael sat there for a few more minutes before standing up and returning to his original seat. Chloe leaned her head to ask him something, but he just shook his head. I turned back to watch the clouds outside the window. They were blindingly white, soft, and cold. It turned out that some things look beautiful from a distance, but only when you fly directly into them do you realize they are nothing but fragile vapor. I took out my phone, turned on airplane mode, and opened my notes app. For years, I had kept a habit of documenting important events, not to keep score against anyone, but to remind myself that my feelings always had a valid reason. I titled the new note Luggage List. The first line I wrote, "Authentic dark gray bag appears in my suitcase before the Miami flight." Second line, "Inside is a brown paper envelope, secretly taken photos of Chloe, wire transfer receipts, contracts for the Florida project." Third line, "Michael claims he misplaced it, but my suitcase is navy blue with a small sticker on the handle. Chloe's suitcase is silver. Impossible to confuse." Fourth line, "Michael claims the photos are internal HR files, but they were taken in private locations with no indication of company documentation." On the fifth line, I paused for a moment before typing. Since the incident happened, Michael has explained himself constantly, but not once has he asked if I felt hurt. Writing that, my eyes stung slightly. Not because of those papers, nor because of Chloe, but because I suddenly realized that the most painful thing in this marriage was not that Michael could betray me, but that he never thought I deserved to hear a single honest word. The plane landed in Miami near 10 in the morning. Michael's company was hosting a client conference at a massive oceanfront hotel on Collins Avenue. The partner's car was already waiting outside the airport. Chloe quickly took the passenger seat, hugging her file folders, calling people to arrange the schedule. Michael and I sat in the back. He maintained his polished exterior, occasionally turning to ask if I was tired or needed water. I answered just enough, neither cold nor overly intimate. The hotel faced the ocean directly. As the car drove past the rows of palm trees, I suddenly remembered that during our first year of marriage, Michael had brought me to Miami. Back then, he held my hand walking along South Beach, telling me that when he made enough money, he would buy a vacation condo right here and bring me down a few times a year. I had believed him. I believed him so much that when we got home, I searched for white curtains online, imagining a sun-drenched balcony. But what a woman fears most is not an unfulfilled promise. What a woman fears most is waking up one day to realize the man who made that promise never actually placed her in his future. After checking in, the receptionist handed over 2 room keys, one for our room and one for Chloe's room at the end of the hallway. I noticed that when the receptionist read Chloe's room number, Michael glanced up very quickly as if he already knew it, but was still afraid I would notice. I pretended not to see. Inside the room, I opened my suitcase to unpack. Michael stood behind me, his voice softening. He told me to rest this afternoon, and for the client dinner tonight, I should wear the teal dress he picked out. He said if people asked about me, all I had to do was smile. I turned to look at him. All I have to do is smile? Michael looked slightly surprised. He explained that he meant I did not need to stress, that he would handle all the company talk. I nodded and took the dress out of the closet to inspect it. The teal dress was gorgeous and luxurious, perfectly tailored to fit the image of an obedient wife walking next to her husband. I ran my fingers over the fabric, suddenly feeling a chill in my heart. For years, Michael always knew exactly what I should wear, to please outsiders' eyes, where I should sit to look good in photos, and exactly how much I should speak to maintain his image. It was just a pity he never knew when I started feeling sad. That afternoon, Chloe knocked on our door, inviting me down to the hotel cafe. She smiled as if the airport incident had never happened. Emma, Michael told me to show you the conference area beforehand so you would not feel overwhelmed tonight. I grabbed my purse and stood up. Sure, I would love to see it. In the elevator, Chloe looked at me through the mirror. After a moment, she said, "You probably are not letting this morning's thing bother you, right? Michael's work gets complicated. Leaving documents lying around is totally normal." I looked back at her in the mirror and smiled. I never said it was abnormal. Chloe choked on her words. Perhaps she wanted me to ask, wanted me to get jealous, wanted me to throw a fit so she could play the victim, but I refused to give her that satisfaction. The client dinner began at 6:30. Michael linked his arm through mine as we walked into the ballroom, smiling, back straight, looking exactly like the successful man he was. He introduced me to every partner. "This is my wife, Emma." I smiled and greeted everyone. One man named Robert, the owner of a major distributorship down south, shook my hand and said, "Emma, you look much younger in person than in the photos. Michael is always posting pictures of your cooking. You look like such an amazing homemaker." I kept smiling, but a sharp pain struck my chest. It turned out that in the eyes of Michael's friends, I was just the woman standing in the kitchen, silently providing the backdrop for the photos he used to decorate his image as the perfect model husband. Midway through the dinner, Robert raised his glass to Michael and casually mentioned, "Oh, about the Florida project. I sent the data over to Chloe the other day. She said she would handle it directly with the finance team." I saw Michael's hand freeze. Chloe looked down at her phone, while I simply set my water glass down on the table gently. An administrative secretary directly handling financial data for a project that lost over $1.5 million. I committed that sentence to memory. That night, Michael drank quite a bit. Back in the room, he collapsed onto the bed, muttering, "Do not make a mess out of this anymore. I can handle everything." I stood by the bed looking at him. This man spoke with such absolute certainty when sober, but let all the cracks show when drunk. I took out my phone, opened the luggage list note, and added a new line. Robert said Chloe directly handles the financial data for the Florida project. Chloe's role goes far beyond administrative secretary. I turned off the lights and lay down on the far edge of the bed. Outside the balcony, the sound of the Miami waves echoed rhythmically, like a patient storyteller. I closed my eyes but could not sleep. I knew the gray bag was only the beginning. Behind it lay contracts, money, Chloe, and a 5-year chunk of my life that Michael had turned into a smokescreen for his actions. And when a screen is torn, the light does not stop at a single crack. The next morning, I woke up earlier than Michael. This habit stemmed from my early days of marriage when his mother used to live with us and always wanted her daughter-in-law to be the first one awake in the house. Even though she had moved back to her home state, the habit clung to me like a thin thread that would not break, even when no one cared anymore. I opened the balcony door. The morning ocean was not as loud as during the day. The waves hit the shore steadily, the wind carrying a light saltiness, just enough to wake you up without being harsh. I stood there for a long time before stepping back inside, quietly opening my purse to grab my phone. Michael was still asleep. He lay on his side, his back to me, breathing steadily but not deeply. He was a restless sleeper, tossing and turning, sometimes sleep-talking. Before, whenever he did that, I would pull the blanket up for him so he would not get cold. Now, I just looked at him and left it alone. I opened the luggage list again, reading every line I had written the day before. Every word appeared clear, without exaggeration, without emotion, just pure facts. I understood that to see where this would lead, I could not rely on feelings alone. I needed things that were far more concrete. At 8 o'clock, Michael woke up. He sat up, rubbing his forehead, his voice raspy. I am so hungover. I handed him a glass of water I had already poured. Drink this, it helps. He took it, drank it in one go, and looked at me. I have a private meeting with some partners this afternoon. You do not need to come, you can just rest in the room. I nodded, asking as if entirely casually, Is Chloe going with you? Michael hesitated slightly but quickly regained his composure. Yes, she handles the paperwork. I did not press further. Asking more questions about answers like that is meaningless. Liars always prepare layers of armor, and the more you try to peel them back, the more time you waste. After breakfast at the hotel restaurant, Michael and Chloe left first. I told them I was going back to the room to rest, but in reality I stayed in the lobby a little longer. I watched them walk out the door. Chloe walked slightly behind and to the side of Michael, but the distance was not that of a boss and a subordinate. It looked more like a habit, as if they were used to walking next to each other like that for a long time. I went up to the room, changed into a simple dress, and called a cab. The driver asked where I wanted to go. I thought for a second and told him to take me to a nearby bank branch. He nodded. The car rolled past the coastal roads. My heart was not too heavy, nor was it relieved. It was just in a state of absolute stillness, like when you are about to step into an unpleasant task but know it must be done. The bank was located on a busy street. I walked in, took a ticket, and waited. When my turn came, I handed my ID to the teller and said I wanted to check on some transactions related to my husband's account, presenting my marriage certificate. The teller looked hesitant, explaining that account information was confidential, and without Michael's direct consent, it would be hard to assist me. I had anticipated this. I smiled, opened my phone, and showed her a photo I took of the stack of papers from the gray bag yesterday. Could you just verify if this account number belongs to your bank? I do not need the balance, I just need to know the name on the account. The teller looked at the photo, then back at me. Perhaps she realized this was no simple matter. After a few seconds, she quietly asked me to wait. About 10 minutes later, a middle-aged man who looked like a manager stepped out. He invited me into a private office. Once the door was closed, he spoke frankly. Emma, I know who you are. Michael is a major client of ours. I was not surprised. Men like Michael leave trails wherever they go. I placed my phone on the desk. I do not want to make things difficult for anyone. I just want to know whose name is on this account. The manager looked at me for a long time before exhaling softly. It is under Chloe's name. My heart did not beat any faster. Only a hollow sensation spread out, as if a final puzzle piece had just snapped into place. Does this account have ties to my husband's company? I asked. He did not answer directly but spoke slowly. Over the last 3 months, there have been multiple transfers from the corporate account to this one. The amounts are not small. I nodded. So it was not just a personal affair. This was about money, about the company, about the things Michael always valued above all else. Leaving the bank, I did not head straight back to the hotel. I walked for a bit and stopped at a small coffee shop. It was quiet, with only a few people working on their laptops. I chose a secluded corner and ordered a black coffee. I opened the luggage list and added a new line. The account in the envelope is under Chloe's name. Multiple massive transfers from the corporate account into this one over the past 3 months. Once done, I put my phone down, staring at the coffee in front of me. Bitter, but starkly clear, unlike Michael's explanations, which were always laced with a bit of sweetness and vagueness to let the listener deceive themselves. I sat there for nearly an hour, neither crying nor calling anyone. Some things only get messier when spoken out loud too soon. I needed to keep everything under control. Early that afternoon, I returned to the hotel. As soon as I walked into the lobby, I saw Chloe standing by the reception desk on her phone. Her voice was low but urgent. I told you, do not call me right now, it is not safe here. She had her back to me, so she did not see me. I stood a few feet away, making no move to get closer. A moment later, she hung up, turned around, and jumped when she saw me. Emma, where did you go? I smiled. Just took a walk to clear my head. Chloe nodded, but her eyes could not hide her tension. She was about to say something else, but stopped. Michael is in conference room 3. He probably will not be done until later this afternoon. I nodded. Yeah, I know. I walked straight back to my room without asking anything else. The further this went, the more I realized that the things I needed to know were rarely found in answers, but in the moments people were unprepared for. Late that afternoon, Michael returned to the room. He looked tired, but upon seeing me, he still forced a smile. Have you eaten dinner yet? No. Let's go down to the restaurant. I am starving. We sat across from each other in the hotel restaurant. The warm lighting, soft music, everything seemed just like a normal evening for a married couple on a business trip. Michael ordered food, asked what I wanted, and served me just like before. I watched him for a moment and then asked, "Michael, how many bank accounts does our company have?" He paused slightly. "Why do you ask?" "Just curious." He took a sip of water and replied, "A few accounts, depending on the project." I nodded, not pressing further. Michael looked at me with a probing gaze. Perhaps he sensed something, but not enough to pinpoint it. The meal passed slowly. No arguments, no heavy words, but between us, an invisible distance was expanding, bit by bit, silently but undeniably. That night, after Michael fell asleep, I opened my phone again. The luggage list had grown longer. I read it from top to bottom and added the final entry for the day. Michael does not deny the money aspect, just avoids it. His behavior is no longer about a misunderstanding, but an active cover-up. I locked the screen, lying completely still, staring at the ceiling. I knew I was standing at a boundary line. On this side was silence, continuing to play the role of the wife everyone saw. On the other side was confrontation, which might mean losing many things, but at least I would not lose myself. Outside, the waves continued to crash steadily, neither faster nor slower, just infinitely patient. I suddenly understood that some things do not need to be rushed. When the truth begins to surface, it finds its own way out. I did not sleep deeply that night, not because of noise, but because my mind had too much to organize. The puzzle pieces were clearly taking shape, but to form the complete picture, I knew I could not be hasty. I used to be someone who trusted easily, someone quick to forgive. But this time, since I had opened my eyes to it, I was going to see it all the way to the end. The following morning, Michael woke up earlier than me. When I opened my eyes, he was already dressed in a crisp button-down shirt, standing before the mirror fixing his collar. Seeing me awake, he turned, his voice gentler than usual. "I have to meet another partner today, I might be back late. If you get bored, go out and have fun. Do not just stay in the room." I sat up, pulling the covers neatly. "Yeah, I know." He looked at me as if wanting to add something, but stopped. In the past, I used to think his hesitation was just because he was a man of few words. Looking back now, it was probably him weighing whether to tell the truth or keep lying. Once Michael left, I did not rush out. I brewed a cup of tea and sat by the small table near the window. The morning sun pouring into the room was not harsh, just bright enough to make everything clear. I opened my phone and read the luggage list once more. Every line was a milestone reminding me that these were no longer just feelings, but tangible facts. I realized I had reached a point of no return. If I stopped now, everything I had done would be meaningless. But if I pushed forward, I would face an outcome I might not be ready for. I sent a text to someone. "Uncle David, it is Emma. Can you help me with something?" Uncle David was an old friend of my father's and a corporate lawyer. I had called him uncle since I was little. A moment later, he replied, "What is going on, Emma? Are you free tonight? I need to talk." "Sure. Where are you?" "Miami." He sent back an address for a coffee shop, adding, "I happen to be here on business too. See you tonight." I read the text and exhaled softly. Sometimes you need someone objective and clear-headed enough to listen without getting swept up in the emotions. I did not go far that afternoon. I just walked around the area near the hotel, stopping by a small convenience store to buy a few random things. Mundane activities, but they kept my mind from spiraling. Around 6, I changed clothes and caught a cab to meet Uncle David. The coffee shop was tucked away on a quiet street, sparsely populated. He was already sitting there, looking as composed as when I was a child. "Emma," he stood up as I approached. "Hi, Uncle David." We sat down. He ordered a tea for me and looked straight at me. "Looking at you, I know something is wrong." I did not beat around the bush. I opened my phone and showed him the photos I had taken. The documents, the transaction list, the joint investment agreement. Uncle David examined them very carefully, staying silent as he read. When he finished, he placed the phone down, his voice deepening. "This is no longer just a marital issue." I stayed quiet. If these documents are authentic, Michael shows signs of siphoning corporate assets to an individual. Regardless of what name he puts it under, if it is not transparent, it is a massive liability. "What should I do?" I asked. He looked at me, his eyes neither softening nor turning cold. "Do you want to save the marriage, or do you want the truth?" I had asked myself that question many times, but hearing someone else say it still made my chest feel heavy. "I do not want to live in a marriage where I have to pretend I do not know things," I said slowly. Uncle David nodded. "Then you need to prepare for 2 things. 1, comprehensive evidence. 2, the mental fortitude to accept the outcome, whatever it is." I tightened my grip on my hands. "I already have some evidence." "Not enough," he stated bluntly. What you have are red flags. To prove this, you need to trace the money, the relationship, and the ultimate use of the funds. As for the emotional side, you have to navigate that yourself. I looked down at my tea. The water had gone cold, its flavor diluted, much like my feelings at that moment. I will help you within my limits, he continued, but the final decision remains yours. We talked for a while longer, mostly about how to gather information and what to watch out for. He did not advise me to divorce, nor did he tell me to let it go. He simply laid out the possibilities for me to choose. On the way back, I did not feel any lighter, but I felt much clearer. At the very least, I knew exactly where I stood and how I had to walk the path forward. When I returned to the hotel, Michael was already in the room. He was sitting on a chair, his phone on the table, screen dark. Seeing me, he asked, "Where did you go this late?" "Meeting an old friend." "Which friend?" I looked at him without flinching. "Uncle David, my dad's friend." Michael froze. I clearly saw the shift in his eyes. "Why did you meet him?" "Just to catch up." The air in the room grew thicker. Michael stood up, stepping closer to me. "Emma, what are you doing?" I did not step back. "I just want to fully understand what is going on." "Understand what?" His voice raised a notch. "Understand you, Chloe, and those funds." The moment I said that, Michael fell silent. No more dodging, no more pretending not to understand. We stood facing each other, only a few steps apart, but it felt like miles. "You looked at those things?" he asked, his voice dropping. "Enough to know things are not as simple as you claim." Michael turned away, rubbing his forehead. "You are overthinking this." I shook my head slowly. "No, I am looking at the facts." He did not reply immediately. After a while, he said, looking exhausted, "This is not what you think it is." "Then tell me." I looked straight at him. "Do not make me keep guessing." Michael remained silent for a long time. I did not push or force him. Some answers are completely meaningless if not given voluntarily. Finally, he simply said, "Give me more time." I smiled faintly, but there was no joy in it. "You have had plenty of time." We did not speak for the rest of the night, each taking a corner of the same room but no longer sharing a single thought. I opened my phone and added to the luggage list. Confronted Michael directly. Did not deny it entirely but continues to delay and ask for time. I paused for a second before adding, "Everything is approaching the point of no return." I turned off the screen and lay down. Michael was not asleep either. I could clearly hear him tossing and turning, exhaling soft sighs. There are nights when people lie next to each other, yet live in entirely different worlds. And I knew, starting tonight, that distance could not be easily bridged. The next morning, neither of us brought up last night's conversation. Michael woke up early, getting ready as usual, but I noticed he no longer looked at me for as long as he used to. His movements were swift and concise, as if actively avoiding any unnecessary points of friction. "I am heading out," he said, his voice normal. "Yeah," I replied. The door clicked shut. The room became so quiet I could hear the hum of the air conditioner. I sat on the bed for a while before walking out to the balcony. The ocean was still there, the waves were still there, unchanged by human drama. Perhaps that is why people seek the ocean when their minds are in turmoil. It does not solve anything, but it forces everything inside you to slow down. I knew that after last night, Michael understood I was no longer someone who would just let things slide, and from this point on, he would be much more careful. That meant if I did not act fast, the traces would slowly be wiped away. I opened my phone and reviewed what I had. Photos of documents, transaction logs, my notes, everything sat neatly in a folder. But just as Uncle David had said, it was not enough to draw a definitive conclusion. I remembered a small detail I had not paid much attention to before. In the investment agreement, besides Michael's signature, there was a memo line about an intermediary account used to cycle short-term capital. At the time, I had skimmed over it, but thinking about it now, it was not so simple. I decided to go back to the bank. This time, I did not ask the teller. I sat in the waiting area observing. When I saw the manager from yesterday walk by, I stood up and approached him. "Could I ask you one more thing?" He looked at me, seemingly having expected my return. "What else do you need to know?" I opened my phone and showed him the photo of the memo line. "This intermediary account, do you have information on it?" He looked closely and spoke quietly. "This is a corporate account, but it is not under Michael's company name." "Then whose name is it under?" He hesitated, but answered anyway. "Another company, established not too long ago." "Does that company have anything to do with Chloe?" He did not answer verbally, but his eyes said it all. "I understand," I said. He looked at me, his voice slowing down. "Emma, there are things that, once you know them, make it very hard to turn back." I nodded. I have no intention of turning back. Leaving the bank, I was no longer surprised. Everything was aligning exactly as I suspected, except every time a new detail was confirmed, the void in my chest grew a little larger. I headed back to the hotel but did not go up to my room. I sat in the lobby, ordered a drink, opened my phone, and started recording everything. The intermediary account is under a different shell company tied to Chloe, highly likely a vehicle for moving money. After typing that, I stopped. I understood that this story was not just about Michael having feelings for someone else. It was a chain of choices, fueled by greed and calculation. I did not go out that afternoon. I stayed in the room, waiting for Michael. Around 7, he returned. Today, he did not even try to act normal. Walking in, he looked at me, his gaze heavier than usual. "You stayed in the room all day?" he asked. "Yeah." "Did not go out at all?" "Depends on the day." Michael dropped his bag, took off his suit jacket, and sat down on a chair. The air between us was no longer evasive silence, but a waiting silence. I was the first to speak. "Michael, whose name is on that intermediary shell company?" He looked up, staring straight at me. This time he did not pretend to be confused. "You know that much already?" "Enough to ask." Michael gave a hollow laugh. "You went further than I thought. Because you went there before me." My words silenced him. After a while, he spoke in a lower tone. "It is a partner company." "What kind of partner has funds from your company routed to them and then straight into Chloe's personal account?" Michael did not answer immediately. He stood up and paced over to the window, looking out. I did not push him. I just waited. "Emma," he said slowly, "there are things in business that are not as simple as you think. I do not need to understand it all. I just need to know if you are doing something illegal." He turned around, a flash of irritation in his eyes. "You are doubting me. I am asking you." The tension in the room thickened, but I did not raise my voice or hurl accusations. I maintained an even tone, just as I decided from the start. Michael let out a sigh. He admitted that some funds were transferred there, but claimed it was to cycle cash flow. Chloe was just putting her name on it to help out. "Why not my name?" I asked. He froze. "Why did you not let your wife's name be on it but chose another woman instead?" Michael could not answer right away, and that silence, to me, was the answer. "You would not understand," he said wearily. "Then explain it." "Not right now." I looked at him and gave a slight nod. "Fine. Then I will find the answers myself." That statement made Michael stare at me longer. Perhaps he began to realize I was no longer someone who would stop just because I was told no. That night, we ate dinner in silence. Neither mentioned Chloe nor the money, but everything was more palpably present than ever. When Michael fell asleep, I opened my phone. The luggage list expanded. Confirmed the intermediary company is a shell. Chloe runs it on paper. Michael signs off. Michael cannot explain his reasons. Continues delaying. I paused, then added another line. The truth is no longer about whether it happened or not, but the severity of it. I turned off the screen and lay still. This time, I did not feel the sting of pain like the first few days. Instead, it was a creeping coldness, like keeping your hand in freezing water for too long. I knew the hardest part ahead was not finding more proof, but confronting the man I had trusted the most, and accepting that he was not who I thought he was. Outside, the wind whipped harder, shaking the balcony door. I lay there listening, understanding that the biggest storm was not outside, but right here, in my own marriage. The next morning, I woke up without the feeling of anticipation I had in previous days. Everything had reached a point where waiting for an answer from Michael was meaningless. When the truth begins to reveal itself, you do not need anyone else to validate it. You just need the courage to face it. Michael woke up early and got ready as usual, but today, before leaving, he lingered at the door. His hand rested on the doorknob, then dropped as he turned to look at me. "Emma," he called out. "Yeah," I answered calmly. "I know you have been thinking a lot these past few days." I said nothing, letting him continue. "I do not want things to go too far." I looked at him, not looking away. "Then you have to be the one to stop first." My words were not heavy, but they were perfectly clear. Michael stayed quiet for a few seconds, then gave a slight nod. "I will tell you everything, but give me a little more time." "How much is your time?" I asked. He could not answer, and that silence once again spoke volumes. Michael left. The door closed, but this time I did not watch him go. I turned back inside, opened my phone, and looked at the luggage list. The lines of text no longer made me anxious. Instead, they acted like a map laid out before me. I knew exactly what I had to do today. I called Uncle David. "Hello," he answered. "Uncle David, yesterday you said I needed more proof about the money, trail, and relationships. I want to keep going." He paused for a moment before asking, "Are you mentally prepared?" "I have no other choice." All right, then follow my lead. First, you need to identify that intermediary company clearly. Who legally represents it, its address, its actual business operations, and find a way to link it to Chloe. I understand. One more thing, he said slowly. You must prepare for the worst-case scenario. If this gets out, it is not just family drama. It will involve federal law and corporate liability. I gripped the phone tightly. I know. I hung up. No hesitation. I got dressed, hailed a cab, and returned to Michael's Miami branch office. When I walked in, Jason, the branch manager I had met before, looked at me with a different expression, not just polite reserve, but a hint of nervousness. Perhaps they had sensed something was happening. Are you back again, Emma? Yeah. I just need to look over some more files. He glanced around, then lowered his voice. Please come into the back office. We went into a small room in the back. Once the door closed, Jason spoke frankly. Emma, I know what you are looking into, but this is not simple. I know, I replied. That is why I need it cleared up. He hesitated. There are some documents I really cannot show you. I do not need you to break any protocols, I said. I just need you to tell me if that intermediary company has any real operations. Jason looked at me for a moment before letting out a soft breath. No. One word. But it was enough. No actual projects, no clear staff, just a legal entity set up for transactions. Who is the person behind it? I asked. He shook his head. On paper, it is someone else, but everyone knows the actual operator is Chloe. I nodded. The final piece of the money trail was practically complete. And Michael? I asked. Jason stayed quiet, then spoke softly. Michael is the one who signs off on it. I did not ask anything else. I had everything I needed. Before leaving, Jason said to me, Emma, I do not know what you are going to do, but Michael is not a bad guy. Sometimes people just take the wrong path. I looked at him and replied softly, Nobody just naturally takes the wrong path. It is always a choice. Leaving the office, I did not feel lighter. In fact, everything had become so brutally clear that there was no room left for hope. That afternoon, I returned to the hotel and did not leave again. I sat in my room organizing all the photos, notes, information from Uncle David, from the bank, and from the branch office. I put everything in its proper place, exactly the way I was attempting to organize my own marriage. When Michael returned that evening, he walked in to find me sitting at the desk surrounded by papers, my phone, and a notebook. He stopped in his tracks. What are you doing? I looked up. I am gathering everything. Gathering what? Everything related to you, Chloe, and that money. The air in the room seemed to freeze solid. Michael stepped closer, looking at the items on the desk. I did not hide or cover them. What do you want to do? He asked, his voice low. I want to know what kind of person I am living with. Are you blowing this way out of proportion? I shook my head. I am looking at it exactly as it is. Michael clenched his fists. You do not trust me. I used to. But what did you do with that trust? You know the answer. My words silenced him. No arguing, no denying. Just a heavy, suffocating silence. Chloe is not just a secretary, I continued. She is on the bank accounts, she is on the shell company, receiving funds from your corporate account. How do you explain that? Michael turned away, his voice quiet. I told you, it was for capital cycling. Then why through her? He did not answer. Because you trusted her more than me? I asked. Michael spun back around, a flash of anger in his eyes. Do not say that. Then you say it. I kept my voice even. Why? He opened his mouth but then shut it. I looked at him. It was the first time I clearly saw sheer helplessness in the eyes of the man I once thought had total control over everything. I cannot talk right now, he said finally. I nodded. Fine. Then I will do the talking. Michael stared at me. I do not care who you have feelings for. I only care if you still have respect for this marriage, and based on what I see, the answer is no. He closed his eyes for a second, then opened them. What do you want? I want you to stop. Immediately. With everything related to her. Michael remained silent for a long time. I did not press. I just waited. Finally, he said, It is not as simple as you think. I smiled faintly, no sadness left. Of course it is not simple. Because if it were simple, you would not have done it. We did not sleep in the same bed that night. Michael took the sofa, I took the bed. Neither spoke another word. But this time, the silence was not a pause of waiting. It was the marking of a line drawn in the sand. I opened my phone and added to the luggage list. Confirmed the shell company. Chloe runs it. Michael signs off. Michael cannot explain and continues delaying. I stopped, then typed the final line. The marriage has reached the point of choice. I turned off the screen and lay down. On the other side of the room, my Babahabaha was not sleeping either. I clearly heard him toss and turn, then fall still. There are nights when you no longer wish for morning to come, because when the sun rises, everything must proceed. And I knew that tomorrow, I would no longer just be the one looking for the truth. I would have to be the one deciding how to live with it. I woke up before dawn. The room was so quiet I could distinctly hear Michael breathing on the sofa. He lay with his back to me, a thin blanket pulled over him in an uncomfortable posture. He probably had not slept deeply all night either. I sat up and slipped out of bed as quietly as possible. Not because I was afraid of waking him, but because I did not want to shatter the heavy silence enveloping the room. Some silences, if broken, shatter into things people are not ready to hear. I stepped out onto the balcony. The Miami morning air still carried a slight chill. The ocean breeze brought that familiar salty scent. I stood there for a long time, not thinking of anything specific, just letting everything inside me settle. Last night I had stated clearly what I wanted. It was not a threat nor an ultimatum, just a boundary. But I knew that for Michael, stopping was no longer simple. And that very fact forced me to consider my next step. I went back inside, opened my phone. The luggage list was still there, longer than any list I had ever written in my life. I read it once more, then locked the screen. Today, I did not need to add another line. Today, I needed to do something else. Around 7, Michael woke up. He sat up, looked around for a moment, then looked at me. His gaze was no longer evasive like the days before, but it lacked its usual confidence. "You are up early," he said. "Yeah." He fell silent for a bit before asking, "Are you going anywhere today?" "I have things to do." The way I said it made him pause. A small change in phrasing, but enough for him to understand everything was different. "What things?" he asked. "I am going to meet Chloe." The atmosphere in the room instantly plummeted. Michael stared at me, his eyes tense. "Why are you meeting her?" "I need to hear it directly from her." "Not necessary," he said quickly. "This is between you and me, that is enough." "I do not think so," I replied, "because the person listed on the accounts in the shell company is her, not you." Michael stood up, stepping closer to me. "Emma, you are making a mess out of everything. I am just making it clear." He looked at me for a long time before speaking slowly. "I do not want you to meet Chloe, but I will meet her." My voice was not loud, but it was absolute. Michael understood that this time I was not asking for his permission. He turned away, rubbing his forehead, then said, "She will not tell you anything. I do not need her to tell me everything. I just need to see how she says it." Michael said no more. Perhaps he knew he could not stop me with words. I got dressed and prepared to head out. Before leaving, I said, "If you truly want to stop, today is your last chance to tell the truth." Michael did not look at me. He stood by the window, his back turned, giving no reply. I left the room. I did not call Chloe. I went straight to the branch office where I knew she would be. When I walked in, the receptionist looked at me with a familiar gaze, but this time with a hint of confusion. Perhaps they felt the shift in the wind. "Is Chloe here?" I asked. "Yes, she is in her office." I went up to see her. Nobody stopped me. I walked down the hall to Chloe's office. The door was slightly ajar. I knocked lightly, then opened it. Chloe was sitting at her desk, holding a stack of files. When she saw me, she shot up from her chair, her expression changing drastically. "Emma." I closed the door, walked in, and sat down in the chair opposite her. "Sit down." Chloe did not sit immediately. She stood there for a few seconds before slowly taking her seat. She clasped her hands together, unable to hide her anxiety. I did not beat around the bush. I said, "You know why I am here?" Chloe looked down, giving no answer. "The account under your name, the shell company tied to you. Funds from my husband's company moved over there." "Explain it to me." Chloe took a deep breath, speaking softly. "You are misunderstanding this." I stared right at her. "You think I came all the way here for a misunderstanding?" Chloe stayed silent. I did not push. I just watched her. After a moment, she spoke, her voice trembling slightly. "I was just following Michael's orders." "Orders for what?" I asked. "He told me to put my name on them to facilitate some transactions." "Facilitate for who?" I pressed. Chloe could not answer right away. "For the company or for the two of you?" I asked slowly. That question made her look up, panic flashing in her eyes. "It is not what you think." I never said what I thought. I cut her off. "I am asking you." Chloe bit her lip and said, "I do not have any relationship with Michael outside of work." I looked at her with zero expression. I had anticipated that sentence, and I also knew it was not enough. "Then why did he trust you enough to let you hold everything in your name?" I asked. Chloe remained silent. The silence stretched longer this time. "Do you realize how this will affect you if it is exposed?" I continued. "I know," she replied softly. Then why did you still do it? Chloe looked up, meeting my eyes for the first time. Because I had no choice. That answer made me pause. No choice? I repeated. You are just an employee, Michael asked, and you could not refuse. Or did you not want to refuse? Chloe froze. Her eyes wavered before looking down again. Think whatever you want, she said quietly, but I am not the one calling the shots. I looked at her for a long time. In those eyes, there was not just fear, but something else I did not want to name. I do not care if you call the shots or not, I said. I only care where you stand in this story. Chloe did not reply. I stood up. I will not have this conversation a second time with you, or with Michael. Chloe stood up as well, her voice urgent. Emma. I stopped, turning back to look at her. You should prepare for what is coming. After saying that, I opened the door and walked out. The hallway looked exactly the same, but I knew that behind that door nothing would ever be the same again. I left the building, stepping out onto the street. The sun was high, the light glaring and sharp. I stood for a moment, taking a deep breath. The meeting did not bring much new information, but it gave me something far more important. The way Chloe dodged, the way she spoke, and the way she could not look me in the eye when answering certain questions. I returned to the hotel. Michael was in the room. He stood up when he saw me. You went to see her? Yes. And what did she say? Not much. Michael looked at me, waiting. I think you know exactly what she would say, I stated. He stayed silent. I walked over to the desk, picked up my phone, opened the luggage list, and said, I have everything I need. Michael looked at me, his eyes shifting. What are you going to do? I looked right back at him. I am not going to ask anymore. He frowned. What do you mean? I am going to decide. The air in the room froze. Michael said nothing more. Perhaps he understood that everything had crossed the point of no return. That night, I did not open my phone immediately. I sat alone by the window for a long time. The city below was still lit up, cars still driving, people still laughing. Life outside does not stop for the tragedy of one family. And perhaps that was the universe's way of reminding me that whatever I chose, life would go on. Michael was not asleep. I knew that even though he did not speak, he lay on the sofa, his back to me, occasionally tossing. The distance between us had stretched from one bed to an entire room. The next morning, I woke up very early. Not out of insomnia, but because I knew exactly what I was going to do. I packed my belongings. Not much, just my personal items. With every item I placed into the suitcase, I looked at it one last time, not out of regret, but to ensure I was leaving nothing vital behind. As I zipped my suitcase shut, Michael walked out of the bathroom. He stopped when he saw me. What are you doing? He asked, his voice hoarse. I am packing. Where are you going? I am heading back first. Michael stepped closer, his eyes tense. What do you mean, heading back first? I do not need to stay here anymore. He stayed quiet for a few seconds before saying, This is not resolved yet. I have resolved my part, I replied. Are you just going to walk away like this? His voice rose. I looked straight at him. I am not walking away, I am just leaving a place where I no longer want to be. Michael clenched his fists. Emma, do not make this more stressful than it is. I am not making it stressful. It has been stressful for a long time. He exhaled sharply and said, I asked for time. I gave you enough time, I said slowly. But you did not use it to tell the truth. My words silenced him. This time there was no reaction, no irritation, just a very distinct stillness. I am going to Boston, I continued. You finish your work here, and when you are done, we will talk. Go to Boston? What for? He asked, dropping the act. He looked at me, his eyes tired. Do you want a divorce? The question was finally out there. No beating around the bush, no avoiding it. I did not answer immediately. I looked at him for a moment and said, I want a clear answer from you. Not today, but no more buying time either. Michael looked down, planting both hands on the table. I do not want to lose you. And what have you done to keep me? I asked. He could not answer. I rolled my suitcase toward the door. Before leaving, I stopped and added one last thing. I never needed you to be perfect, but I needed you to be honest. After saying that, I opened the door and walked out. The hallway was the same as every day, but with every step I felt different. Not heavy, not light, just a decisiveness that took me days to earn. I went down to the lobby and checked out early. The receptionist looked slightly surprised but asked no questions. Stepping out of the hotel, I paused. The ocean breeze was still blowing. The sun was high. I took a deep breath and got into a cab. On the way to the airport, I did not look at my phone. I just stared out the window. The streets, the trees, the storefronts passing by looked like a movie I had already seen and had no desire to rewatch. I did not cry. Perhaps because tears were no longer necessary. When I arrived in Boston, I went straight to my parents' house. My mother opened the door, surprised to see me. "You are back early? Is the trip over?" "Yes, it is over, Mom." She looked at the suitcase in my hand, then looked at me more closely. "Is something wrong, sweetie?" I set the suitcase down and walked inside. "Nothing major. I just wanted to be home for a bit." She did not pry further. She just pulled me inside. "Go wash your face, I have dinner ready." Sometimes parents do not need to ask too many questions. Just a hot meal and a familiar space are enough to keep you from drifting away. My dad was sitting in the living room. Seeing me, he nodded. "You are back." "Yeah." He did not ask anything, but I knew he saw something was off. Dinner that day was slower than usual. My mom put food on my plate, asking about random things. I answered normally. Nobody mentioned Michael. After dinner, I sat with my dad for a while. He poured some tea and handed me a cup. "If there is something on your mind, say it," he said. His voice was deep. I held the teacup, watching the thin steam rise. "I am thinking about my marriage." My dad was not surprised. He just nodded. "Have you thought enough?" "Almost." "What are you missing?" "Making the decision myself." He looked at me, his eyes firm but not harsh. "Then do not let anyone else make it for you." I nodded. That night, I went back to our empty house in Chicago. The house looked exactly the same, but opening the door, I felt an undeniable emptiness. Not because of the lack of people, but the lack of safety I once thought existed. I put my suitcase down, sat on the couch, and my phone vibrated. It was Michael. I stared at the screen for a moment before picking up. "You are back?" he asked. "Yes." "Where are you?" "Home." He fell silent for a moment before saying, "I am coming home early. Do what you want. Emma, if you have something to say, say it." He exhaled softly. "I need to talk to you. When you get home, we will talk." I hung up. Not angry, not sad, just utterly unwilling to drag out any dialogue when things were still unclear. I opened my phone. For the first time in days, I did not open the luggage list. Instead, I opened a new note and wrote a single line. "What I need now is not the truth anymore, but a choice." I stared at that sentence for a long time before locking the screen. I slept alone that night. No sound of Michael tossing, no presence of the person I once thought I could not live without. Perhaps this was the first time I truly faced my marriage, not through memories, not through habits, but through my own active choice. The next evening, I did not turn on the living room lights, leaving only a small table lamp glowing in the corner, just enough to see. The house was not completely dark, but it was not bright enough to feel comfortable. Perhaps I deliberately kept it in that limbo, mirroring my own emotional state. Around 10 o'clock, I heard the key turn in the lock. Michael was home. He walked in, pausing for a few seconds when he saw me sitting on the sofa. The yellow light cast across his face made every line look more exhausted than usual. "You are still awake?" he asked. "I was waiting for you." He dropped his bag, took off his coat, and sat on the chair opposite me. There was no physical distance like the days in the hotel, but the invisible void between us remained, untouched. "I thought a lot on the flight back," Michael said slowly. "I think we need to clear everything up." I nodded. "Go ahead." He looked down at the table, clasping his hands. "The idea with that bag was not mine." I did not interrupt. "It was the company," he continued. "Specifically, the finance department. They were under an internal audit. Some funds were completely off the books, directly tied to Linda. That was the first time he said her name. Linda was the finance director. "Linda is the one in charge of that department," Michael said. "But if it gets exposed, it is not just her. I go down with her." "Why would you go down?" I asked. "Because I am the final sign-off." The answer was brief, but enough for me to understand the scope. "Did that bag contain documents?" I asked. "Not just documents," he said. "There was also cash." I fell silent. "The original plan was to smuggle that bag out via a carry-on, bypassing internal checks," he said. "Then someone would retrieve it on the other side." "Was the recipient Linda?" I asked. Michael nodded. "Why my suitcase?" I asked bluntly. He stayed quiet for a moment before answering. "Because you are the only one nobody would suspect." That answer made me let out a soft laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it was glaringly obvious. "So you chose me," I said, "because I was safe." Michael looked up. "I never thought it would go this far." "You never thought, or you chose not to think?" I asked. He did not reply immediately. A moment later, he said, "I was forced." "Forced by who? The board? Did someone put a knife to your throat?" I asked, my voice still perfectly calm. Michael frowned. "Emma, do not say that. I am just trying to gauge exactly how forced you were," I replied. He sighed. "I could not say no. If I refused, they would pin all the liability on me. I would lose everything. And you thought shifting it onto me would save you? I asked. Michael stayed silent. That question needed no answer anymore. I understand, I said slowly. You picked the path with the least risk to yourself. That is not it, he said quickly. I calculated it so nobody would find out. But you did not calculate the possibility that I would find out, I replied. He looked at me, his eyes wavering. I am sorry. That apology came far too late and meant absolutely nothing now. And what about you and Linda? I asked. Michael froze. Just say it all, I cut in. I am done hearing things in pieces. He was quiet for a long time. The space between us grew heavier by the second. Linda and I were seeing each other, he said softly. Even though I had prepared myself, that sentence still made my heart drop a beat. For how long, I asked. About half a year. Did it start before or after the financial audit issue? I pressed. After. So it was both business and pleasure, I said. It was not love. He reacted quickly. It was just. Just what? I asked. He could not finish the sentence. I looked at him for a moment and said, You do not need to explain it like that. It does not make it any better. Michael hung his head. I was wrong, I know, he said. A suffocating silence took over the living room. No arguments, no interrogations, just the raw, freezing truth lying right there on the table. I have one last question, I said. Michael looked up. If I had not found out, what would you have done? He did not answer immediately, but this time, I waited. I would have kept going, he said a few seconds later. That answer was more definitive than any excuse he had offered before. I nodded. That is enough. Michael looked at me, his voice dropping. Emma, I know I have no right to defend myself anymore, but I still want to ask. What are you going to do? I leaned back against the sofa, looking straight at him. I am not going to stay in a marriage where I am used as a tool. He closed his eyes for a second. I understand, he said. But I also do not want to do things purely out of emotion, I continued. This is not just between you and me anymore. It involves federal law, your career, and our families. You want me to, he trailed off. I want you to handle your end of this first, I said. With the company, with Linda, and with the crimes you committed. Michael nodded slowly. I will. After that, I continued, we will resolve our part. A divorce? He asked. I looked at him, not answering right away. I did not say divorce, I said, but I also see zero reason to continue. That was not a threat. It was a fact. Michael stayed silent. I will give you time, I said. But this time, it is not for you to think. It is for you to act. He nodded. I understand. I stood up. Tonight, you sleep out here. He did not object. He probably knew he had forfeited that right anyway. I walked into the bedroom and closed the door, not slamming it, but decisively. In that familiar room, everything was the same, but I knew that starting tonight, everything was irreversibly different. I lay down on the bed, staring at the ceiling. I did not feel the suffocating pain from days prior, nor did I feel completely relieved. Just a stark clarity. At least I had the answers. At least I was no longer anchored by the unknown. Outside the room, I heard Michael move around, and then total silence returned. I did not fall asleep right away, but I did not overthink either. Some things, once clear, require no further thought. When I opened the bedroom door the next morning, Michael was already up. He was standing on the balcony smoking. I stepped out. He turned to look at me, saying nothing. In that moment, I realized that we were no longer a married couple in any real sense. Just two people standing before a massive decision. And this time, nobody could run away. I did not ask Michael a single question that morning. I brewed coffee, placing 2 mugs on the table out of old habit, but I did not call him over. He walked in himself and sat across from me. We both knew that from this moment on, every word spoken carried heavy weight. There was no room left for vagueness. Michael took a sip of coffee and spoke first. I contacted the company. I did not look at him. And they want me in for a direct meeting. This afternoon, he said. I nodded. You should go. I am going to confess to everything, Michael added, his voice heavy. No more hiding. I paused for a few seconds before asking, confess everything to protect who? Michael looked up at me. It was not an easy question. I am confessing to take responsibility, he replied. Good, I said. At least this time you chose the right path. Michael looked down, saying nothing more. I knew this was not simple for him, but some mistakes, if you do not step up to carry them yourself, no one else will carry them for you. The morning passed slowly. I did not go to work. I called in and took a personal day. My manager asked if everything was all right. I just told her I needed time to handle a family matter. She did not pry, just told me to let her know if I needed any support. I thanked her and hung up. At home, I organized my closet. Not because it was messy, but because I needed to do something to keep my mind from spiraling into negative thoughts. I folded every shirt, reorganized every drawer. There were items I had bought for Michael that still looked brand new. There were the suits he wore to work. I used to think he was grinding for our family. Looking back now, nothing was as simple as I had believed. By noon, Michael was getting ready to leave. He put on a crisp white dress shirt, just like he did for any major meeting in the past. "I am heading out," he said. I nodded. "Yeah." He stood there for a few seconds, as if wanting to say something else. But he stopped, opened the door, and walked out. The door shut, and the house fell completely silent. I sat down on the chair, staring into the empty space in front of me. For the first time in days, I felt untethered from my emotions. No blinding rage, no intense panic, just a cold sobriety, sharp enough to see everything clearly. Around 3 in the afternoon, my phone buzzed. It was Michael. I stared at the screen for a few seconds before picking up. "I am listening." His voice on the other end was raspy. "I am at the corporate office. I finished the meeting, and things are much worse than I thought." I stayed quiet, waiting for him to continue. "They already knew," Michael said. "It was not just an audit suspicion. They had hard proof." "What kind of proof?" I asked. "Transaction logs, emails, and even camera footage." I frowned. "Cameras in your office?" "Not public cameras, internal security feeds." "I see. So the company had been monitoring them for a while. Then why did they call you in?" I asked. "For a formal statement," he said, "and to see if I would cooperate." "What did you say?" "I admitted my part of it," Michael replied. "As for Linda, they already had enough to bury her." I exhaled softly. "And you?" "I am suspended indefinitely," he said, pending the final corporate and legal review. "Are federal charges involved?" I asked directly. Michael stayed silent for a moment before answering. "Probably." That answer did not shock me. I had considered this possibility since last night. "Do you have a lawyer?" I asked. "No," he replied. "I am looking for one now." "Find one immediately," I said. "Do not let things spiral out of control before you start defending yourself." "I know," he said. "I will do it right now." A brief silence hung between us. "Emma," he called out. "I am here." "I do not want you dragged into this," he said. "I am already dragged into this," I replied. "Since the second you put that bag into my suitcase." Michael said nothing. "But the rest is your responsibility," I continued. "Go handle it." "I will," he said quietly. The call ended. I put my phone down, feeling a weight in my chest but no chaos. At least things were moving in the right direction. The truth was out and accountability was taking shape. Late that afternoon, I got another call. It was Michael's mother, Martha. I stared at the screen for a moment before picking up. "Hello, Martha." Her voice sounded incredibly tense. "Emma, what is going on with Michael? I heard there is a major issue at his company. I knew this would reach the family sooner or later." "Yes. Michael is cooperating with a corporate investigation right now." I kept my voice steady. "Did he do something illegal?" She pressed. I paused for a second before answering. "It involves corporate finances." On the other end, she sighed heavily. "Oh my God, why was he so stupid?" I said nothing. "And you?" she asked. "Are you implicated?" "No," I replied. "I was not involved in any of it." She was quiet for a moment before saying, "That is good. Keep your hands clean. Do not let him drag you down." I quietly replied, "I know." "And what about the two of you?" she asked, her voice slowing down. I knew she was probing. "We are still talking things through," I said. "If anything happens, talk to me," she said. "After all, you are my daughter-in-law." That sentence, had it been said in the past, might have warmed my heart. Now, I only felt the vast distance between us. "Yes, I know," I replied. The call ended. I sat completely still for a moment before walking out to the balcony. It was getting dark. Down below, cars were driving by like any other day. Other people's lives do not stop just because yours falls apart. I asked myself where I would end up after all this. Not an immediate decision, but a clear path forward. That night, Michael came home late. He walked into the house, his face more exhausted than it had been in the morning. "I cooked dinner," I said. "You should eat." He looked at me, mildly surprised. "Thank you, Emma." We sat at the same table but barely spoke. The atmosphere was not as tense as before, but nowhere near intimate. After dinner, Michael said, "I contacted a defense attorney." "Good," I replied. "I might have to go to federal court," he added. I nodded. "Prepare yourself for that." He looked at me. "And you? Have you thought about it?" I set my fork down and looked at him. "I am thinking about us," he clarified. "I know," I replied. A long silence followed. "I am not rushing you," he said. But I am not going to drag this out pointlessly either, I stated. Michael nodded. I understand, he said. We slept in separate rooms again that night. Nothing more was said. But I knew everything was steadily approaching a conclusion. Not with a massive explosion, but with slow, deliberate, irreversible steps. In the days that followed, the house maintained its old routine, but the atmosphere had entirely shifted. No morning greetings, no small talk over dinner. Everything was perfectly functional and minimal, like two strangers sharing a roof because neither had managed to move out yet. Michael started leaving the house more frequently. Not for work, but to meet his lawyer, the corporate investigators, and authorities. Sometimes he came home extremely late. Sometimes he sat in the living room until dawn. I did not ask, nor did I interfere. His burden was his to carry alone. As for me, I went back to work. On my first day back, I wore a simple outfit and minimal makeup. Looking in the mirror, I saw that I was still myself, but my eyes were different. At the office, people worked normally, but I knew some had heard about Michael's situation. Fleeting glances, half-finished sentences, it was all enough for me to understand. During the lunch break, my manager pulled me aside. Emma, I will not ask for details, but if you need more time off, just tell me. I shook my head. No, I am fine. I want to work. She looked at me for a moment, then nodded. Working is a good way to keep yourself grounded. I smiled faintly. She probably understood more than I thought. Over the next few weeks, I maintained a strict schedule. Work in the morning, home in the evening, read a book, or clean. I did not actively avoid Michael, but I did not initiate conversation either. Between us, interaction was kept to the bare minimum. One evening, while I was folding laundry in my room, Michael knocked on the door. Emma, do you have a minute? I looked up. What is it? I want to talk. I placed the shirt down and sat up straight. Come in. Michael walked in and sat on the chair opposite me. He looked much thinner than a few days ago, his face hollow. I just got back from the lawyer's office, he said. I assumed, I replied. The case is going to be prosecuted, he said slowly. The severity depends on my cooperation. I nodded. Are you mentally prepared for that? I am getting there, he said. But I wanted to talk to you about something else. I looked at him. Go ahead. He paused as if organizing his thoughts. I completely cut ties with Linda, he said. I did not react immediately. When? I asked. The day after the airport, he answered. I gave a slight nod. That is what you should have done. I know that does not change anything for you, Michael said. But I wanted to be clear. I understand, I replied. But exactly as you said, it does not change the core issue. Michael looked down. I know. The room fell silent. But this time, it was not a heavy silence. It felt more like a necessary pause. Emma. Michael cleared his throat. Yeah. I have thought a lot, he said. Not just about the company, but about us. I watched him, waiting for him to continue. I realized a long time ago that I stopped putting you in the place you deserve to be, he said. I treated you like a certainty, so I stopped trying to keep you. I said nothing. I had felt that for a long time, but hearing him admit it still touched a nerve. I am not asking for your forgiveness, he continued. I do not think I have the right to ask for that anyway, but I wanted to say, I finally understand. I exhaled softly. Understanding is one thing, fixing it is another. Michael nodded. I know. So do not just say things to make yourself feel better. Do what needs to be done. I will, he answered. I looked at him for a moment and asked, what are your plans if you have to face federal prison time? He stayed quiet for a moment before saying, I will take responsibility. And your family? I asked. I have not told my parents everything yet, he said. I just told them there was a work issue. I think you need to tell them the truth, I said. They will find out sooner or later. Michael nodded. I am figuring out how. I stood up, walking over to the window to look down at the street. The yellow streetlights stretched out, cars passing by just like any other day. Michael, I called out. Yeah. If one day you lose everything you had, do you know how you are going to survive? He thought for a while. I never thought about it before, but now I think I just have to start over. Starting over is not easy, I said. I know, he replied. But maybe that is the price I have to pay. I turned back to look at him. Yes, every choice has a price. Michael stood up. And you? Have you made a decision? The question was finally asked. I looked at him, not avoiding his gaze. I have thought about it a lot. He waited. We cannot go back to the way we were, I said slowly. No matter how much you change, what happened is still there. Michael nodded, as if he had already prepared for this answer. But I also do not want to make a definitive legal decision while everything is still a mess, I continued. I want to wait. Wait for what? He asked. Wait until your situation is completely resolved, I replied. Wait until I am absolutely certain I am not acting on temporary emotions. Michael stayed silent for a moment before saying, I respect your decision. I nodded. During this time, I said, we keep things exactly as they are. We do not interfere in each other's lives, but we do not do anything to make the situation worse either. I understand, Michael replied. He walked out of the room, closing the door gently behind him. I sat on the edge of the bed, looking around the familiar room. Everything was in its place, but the feeling was gone. It was no longer the sanctuary of a complete marriage, but the waiting room of a chapter about to end. I slept much better that night. Not because everything was okay, but because I knew I was on the right path. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. I brewed coffee, opened the balcony door, and took a deep breath. The morning air was crisp and light. Michael woke up too, but said nothing. We just gave each other a brief nod, like two acquaintances passing by. In that moment, I understood that for some relationships, when they reach this point, words are no longer needed. Everyone just needs to walk their own path. The following days passed steadily, neither fast nor suffocatingly heavy. Everything fell into a clear order, as if both of us had accepted our roles in the final act of this story. Michael continued commuting between the company, his defense attorneys, and grueling depositions. I never asked for details, but from the way he came home, from his eyes and his posture, I knew it was not going well. There were days he sat on the balcony for hours, not smoking, just staring down at the street as if trying to process everything that had happened. One afternoon, right after I got home from work, Michael called out to me, Emma, I need to tell you something. I put my bag down and sat across from him. Go ahead. He took a deep breath and spoke slowly. The company made its official decision. I looked at him without speaking. I am officially terminated, he said, and they handed the files over to federal investigators. Despite having prepared for it, that sentence still made the air in the room drop. And Linda? I asked. Same, he replied, but her charges are significantly heavier. I gave a slight nod, not out of concern for Linda, but because I knew this was the ultimate point of no return. What does your lawyer say? I asked. I am going to be indicted, Michael said, but if I cooperate fully, I might get a reduced sentence. I stayed quiet for a few seconds before saying, then do whatever you need to do. Michael looked at me, his voice dropping. I confessed to everything. I hid nothing. Good, I replied. A silence fell, but this time it was not a silence of avoidance. It was the silence of acceptance. Emma, Michael called out. Yeah, I am sorry, he said. I looked at him. This time I did not react the way I used to. I did not brush it off, nor did I accept it. I have heard you say that many times, I said. But maybe this is the first time you actually understand what it means. Michael nodded, not arguing. I do not expect you to forgive me, he said. I just want you to know I realize I was wrong, and I am paying the price. I exhaled softly. I know. That night, we ate dinner together. Not out of habit, but because both of us understood there would not be many dinners like this left. After the meal, I spoke to him. Michael, I think it is time we finalize our own situation. He put his fork down and looked at me. Yeah. I sat up straight, my voice calm. I have thought about it long enough, and I have made my decision. Michael did not interrupt. We need to end this, I said. When those words left my mouth, they were not as heavy as I once feared. They were clear, absolute, and devoid of hesitation. Michael remained silent. He did not look surprised, nor did he object. He just gave a slight nod. I understand, he said. I am not doing this out of anger, I continued. I am doing it because I know if we keep going, neither of us will ever be able to live a normal life. Michael looked down at the table. I know I have no right to ask you to stay. I do not need you to ask me to stay, I said. I just need a conclusion. Right, he nodded. We will start the legal paperwork soon, I said. Once your legal situation stabilizes a bit. Okay, Michael replied. A long silence stretched out, but it no longer bothered me. Fight a period placed at the end of a finished sentence. Emma, Michael called out. I am listening. Thank you for being direct with me. I looked at him. It was the least I could do for both of us. That night, I packed the rest of my personal belongings. Not because I was leaving that exact second, but because I wanted to be ready. I folded my clothes and placed them into the suitcase. The very suitcase that had led to my discovery was now the object I was using to leave. Life really has a strange way of coming full circle. The next morning, I woke up early. Michael had already left. There was a small note left on the kitchen island, going to the lawyer's office. Stay at the house as long as you need. Call me if you need anything. I stared at the note for a moment, then folded it up. I did not call him. At noon, I drove back to my parents' house in Boston. When I walked in, my mom looked at me for a long time. "Is everything all right, honey?" she asked. I sat down and spoke slowly. "Michael and I are getting a divorce." She stayed quiet for a few seconds before sighing. "I kind of guessed." I looked at her. "Are you mad at me?" She shook her head. "No, marriage is a lifetime commitment. If you cannot hold on to it, let it go. But letting go the right way is what matters." I nodded. Her words were simple, but they reassured me that I was not wrong in choosing this path. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I am okay," I replied. "At least I know exactly what I am doing." My mom placed her hand over mine. "That is all that matters." I stayed in Boston until the afternoon, then drove back to the house in Chicago. Not because I wanted to return, but because I needed to finalize what was left undone. That evening, Michael came home. He saw my packed suitcase sitting in the corner of the living room, but asked no questions. "Did you tell your mother?" he asked. "I did," I replied. "What did she say?" "She respects my decision." Michael nodded. "I told my parents too." "How did they react?" I asked. "My mom is devastated," he said, "but she does not blame you." I was not surprised. Martha, despite everything, was a reasonable woman. We sat down, speaking very little. There was nothing left to debate, nothing left to salvage. "Emma," Michael said. "Yeah. Take good care of yourself." I looked at him and smiled faintly. "You too. No grand promises, no if there is a next life. Just two people who used to be husband and wife, wishing each other the simplest things." I did not sleep in the bedroom that night. I lay on the sofa, staring up at the ceiling. The space was familiar, but my heart was different. I was no longer the passive woman waiting in the dark. I was the woman who chose to walk away the moment she realized she was no longer respected. The next morning, I rolled my suitcase to the front door. Michael stood there, making no move to stop me. "I am leaving," I said. "Yeah," he replied. I opened the door and stepped outside. The morning sun hit my eyes, slightly blinding but incredibly clear. I did not look back. Not because I was cold-hearted, but because I knew that once you walk through certain doors, there is no need to look behind you anymore. My marriage ended not with a massive screaming match, but with a silence long enough for both of us to understand that there was nothing left to hold on to. And sometimes, that is the truest kind of ending. The story ends here, but what lingers is not found in the mistakes or the heartbreak, but in how each person chose to face it. Marriages do not break because of a lack of love at the beginning, but because along the way, people forget how to protect what they once cherished. In life, no one can completely avoid losing their way. But taking a wrong turn once is not as terrifying as knowing you are on the wrong path and still choosing to walk it. The true value of a person is not that they never stumble, but whether they have the clarity to stop, reflect, and correct their course. Emma chose to leave not because she ran out of love, but because she understood that holding on to a relationship where trust had shattered would only exhaust them both. As for Michael, what he lost was not just his career or his marriage, but a profound lesson in responsibility and choices. What happened was no accident. It was the culmination of small, calculated decisions over time. There is an old saying, "In life, true superiority does not lie in who is more successful, but in who maintains their integrity the longest." Money can be remade, reputations can be rebuilt, but once you lose your basic decency, winning back someone's trust is nearly impossible. In a family, the most precious thing is not how big the house is or how much wealth is accumulated, but the genuine sincerity you give each other. It is about choosing to hold each other's hands through the storm, rather than turning your back. But if one side has already let go, the other must be strong enough to walk away without bitterness, without clinging to something that no longer belongs to them. And above all, no matter where we go or what we do, we should always remember our roots. Remember the parents who spent their lives teaching us how to be decent human beings. Living in a way that allows you to return home without shame, that is the most valuable thing to protect. Life is not perfectly fair, but cause and effect are always remarkably clear. You reap exactly what you sow. It is only a matter of time. So instead of chasing short-term gains, choose to live with honor and kindness. You might walk a bit slower than the rest, but your heart will be light, and your steps will be firm. This story closes on an imperfect ending, but it opens a much clearer path for both individuals. There is loss, there is regret, but there is also growth. And sometimes that is the most important thing of all. May everyone who hears this story learn to appreciate what they have. Slow down a little, think a little deeper, and choose kindness a little more often. Because ultimately, what remains the longest in a person's life is not their successes or their failures, but the way they chose to live,